NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. Battle lines, some being manned by armed civilian supporters of Muammar Gadhafi, are being formed around the Libyan capital tonight in anticipation of a violent showdown with rebel forces. And as the Libyan regime tries to prove it's still in control of the country, those rebel forces are tonight reportedly nearing the outskirts of Tripoli and the center of power. Today, for the first time, President Obama called for Gadhafi to step down, saying the Libyan dictator has lost his legitimacy. We have several reports from inside Libya. We want to begin with Jonathan Rugman of our British partner ITN Channel 4, who is in Tripoli tonight.
They were burying their dead in Tripoli today, paying the ultimate price for protesting against Muammar Gadhafi's rule. Thousands attended this funeral, and some were inconsolable with grief. 68 bodies counted by just one doctor here in the last few days. Gadhafi, we will bury you, they shouted. Such defiance in Libya's capital, almost unthinkable till this uprising which began only last week. Just outside Tripoli, another sign of the crisis confronting Libya's regime. Soldiers joining protesters in the town of Zawiya, just 30 miles from the capital. These pictures can't be verified, but it seems this rebellion is now on Gadhafi's doorstep. And now rebel army commanders claim small groups are converging on Tripoli itself. This checkpoint is on the road to Zawiya. Men in long coats with Kalashnikovs defending Tripoli itself. Though when we started filming openly, the guns suddenly disappeared. Instead, the militia whipped up for our camera a demonstration in support of 41 years of Colonel Gadhafi's rule. There is only one Muammar Gadhafi and only one God for Libya, they chanted. And when we spotted 3 Chinook helicopters heading off towards trouble, defectors from Gadhafi or not, we don't know, they made it impossible for us to film.
I just come now from Zawiya. Everything is peace, alhamdulillah.
Everything is peaceful in Zawiya?
Everything is peace in Zawiya.
All the people in Libya love Muammar Gadhafi.
All the people in Libya love Gadhafi?
All the people in Libya.
Is Mr. Gadhafi going to survive as your leader?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. He's going to survive. There are a lot of supporters.
Because there's been violence in Zawiya just down the road here.
No, I don't think so.
This roadblock is 5 miles from the centre of Tripoli. If army defectors get as far as this, the capital will lie before them, and the noose will have tightened even further on the Gadhafi regime. Yet from one of Gadhafi's sons late last night, an extraordinary denial. Saif Gadhafi in relaxed mode, telling us that everything in Libya is calm, with no casualties and no attacks. And when I asked him about the loss of Benghazi, Libya's second city, he sounded as if he couldn't quite believe it himself. Your father's lost control of Benghazi. He must be disappointed. He must feel that this is a big blow.
Listen, in Benghazi there is 1.5 million people, and they are talking to us and calling us. People there are afraid of the militia on the ground, because they're militia, armed militia.
But do you think he will ever get back the parts of Libya that he has lost?
It's not. Libya, Benghazi is part of Libya.
But do you think your father will get those bits
excuse
back?
me, Benghazi is part of Libya.
It's not the fear inside and outside Libya that you may be on the brink of a civil war if there is no central control?
Not anymore. Not anymore, because the Libyan people, they woke up and now they realize the danger.
And what spirits is your father in?
Very good. Morals are very high.
Yet video shot by protesters in Tripoli in the last few days appears to challenge that. This is a divided city where brute force is all that lies between Colonel Gadhafi and those risking death to get rid of him. Jonathan Rugman, Channel 4 News, Tripoli.
And as we just saw, the Libyan regime is trying to project a calm public face in this crisis that does not jibe with many of the pictures we're seeing. NBC's Jim Maceda just arrived in Tripoli, and when we spoke with him a short time ago, we asked him which Tripoli he saw on his way in.
Lester, well, I think I've seen some of both, really. On the one hand, Tripoli, at least the ride from the airport to the center of the town and our hotel, looks like a city and not a war zone. First off, you see streetlights everywhere, and that's usually the first thing that goes in an urban battle. And along the route, Colonel Qaddafi's face, if not on every poster, was really on the biggest posters. Tripoli is clean, it's quiet, but it's not a normal city. It feels like it's in lockdown or under curfew, which it's not. Tonight's a Saturday night, usually busy here, but I saw no people and very few cars in the streets. And while I saw no soldiers either, we did run into a pro-Gaddafi checkpoint at one point, manned by civilians who were extremely suspicious, even asking our government minder, who was driving at the time, for his ID before waving us through. So you certainly do feel, if not two Libyas, two Tripolis. There's one that's been cleaned up for us, the foreign press, and there's another one which is very tense and clearly bracing for something. It's quite eerie. Lester?
Maseda in Tripoli tonight. Now, you heard that claim by Gaddafi's son that the city of Benghazi was still in government control, although he may be among the very few who still think that's true. In fact, Benghazi was the tipping point of this rebellion. NBC's Stephanie Gosk remains there for us tonight with new details on how the battle unfolded and how it has already changed Libyans' lives.
Good evening, Lester. Well, it's peaceful here, but no one is certain how long that's going to last. Foreigners are still fleeing, and earlier today, the British military had to send in 2 planes to rescue 150 oil workers stranded in the desert. The city of Benghazi fell fast to the opposition. NBC has obtained this video from protesters of the final moments of the battle. Almost unimaginable until it happened, the nighttime gunfight outside this city's military base. Rebel forces took over the compound and looted the weapons. In the streets, riot police were outnumbered, at one point forced to turn and run from an obviously angry mob. Today at the courthouse where the protests first began, the opposition is trying to put this city back together with a new set of rules. The most important, they say, is the freedom to say whatever they want in public.
This used to be the political tribunal building. Places like this have been set up all across the country by Gaddafi to try, potentially put in prison, anyone that speaks out against the government. This is one of the first buildings they burnt down in Benghazi.
Nagla Mangush, a lawyer and a mother of 2, told me people here used to live in fear.
If I speak against Muammar Gaddafi or his regime, I will be arrested.
While talking to her, this man, who said he was a former political prisoner, stopped Mangush to tell his story.
Are people like him now able to come out on the street and talk about
it? Yes, it's able.
First time.
Yes, the first time, yes.
Others have new methods to express themselves. Today, the first edition of the Freedom of Libya newspaper was printed. The headline, Unity Against Oppression. And outside of town, the former Voice of Benghazi radio station is now the voice of a free Libya. It is as if I'm in a dream, he says. I never imagined I would be able to express myself this freely. As people here continue to bury the dead, they know the fight isn't over. Their eyes are on Tripoli. Many here say they are ready to fight again to protect their newfound freedom.
The opposition says it has an armed force of 2,000 to support the rebels in Tripoli. The only problem, they'll have to travel 700 miles to get to the capital, and they'll have to go straight through pro-Gaddafi territory. Lester?
Stephanie Gosk in Benghazi for us tonight. Stephanie, thanks. And in the middle of this battle, the effort to get Americans and other foreigners out of Libya goes on. NBC's Martin Fletcher is in Malta and has that part of the story for us. Martin, good evening.
Hi, Lester. Well, there's an all-out effort to get the last of the Americans out of Libya, those who want to leave. Occidental Petroleum were flying out a plane this evening here to Malta to bring out about 150 people. It isn't clear how many of those people are Americans. The British and the French are also offering to help American nationals succeed to get out of Libya. But there was a dramatic upping of the stakes by the British tonight in the rescue that Stephanie Gosk referred to in the southern deserts of Libya. 2 British Hercules planes, military planes, flew there, presumably with a fighter escort, to take out in several locations British citizens in those southern deserts who weren't able to make it to the ports or the airports. There are many people like that around the country who can't make it to the gathering points. There apparently, reportedly, were also British special forces on those planes to secure the ground while the while the evacuees were boarding the planes. They flew to Malta to here today. They arrived at the airport presumably tired, happy to be away from the violence, Lester.
That sounds like a pretty dicey rescue mission. Do we have any more details on how risky it might have been, Martin?
Well, they had to fly through Libyan airspace. We don't really know clearly the details, Lester, but they did have to fly through Libyan airspace, and we know that Gaddafi still controls his air force. He was sending planes apparently to bomb his own people, so they are in their own sky. So those lumbering transport planes, the Hercules, must have had some kind of fighter escort as they flew in. As I mentioned, reportedly there were special force troops on the ground, SAS, to secure the area. So it would have certainly been a risky mission, but I guess the British felt it was necessary to evacuate their nationals. And hopefully there may have been some Americans on board too.
Martin Fletcher tonight for us in Malta. Thanks. As we noted at the top of the broadcast, the White House is taking an increasingly hard line against Libya with sanctions announced yesterday. And today, some tough new words for Muammar Gadhafi. NBC's Mike Vicara is at the White House with that part of our coverage. Mike?
Good evening, Lester. For the first time since this uprising began in Libya, the president is publicly and explicitly calling for Colonel Muammar Gadhafi to leave Libya, ousting him as the leader of 41 years of that country. The president continued today consulting with staff, speaking with world leaders, and in one such call with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. The White House tells us afterwards that the president told Merkel, when a leader's only means of staying in power is to use mass violence against his own people, he has lost the legitimacy to rule and needs to do what is right for his country by leaving now. And shortly after that statement, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton came out with virtually identical words, calling for Gaddafi to leave now to avoid further violence and bloodshed. And as you mentioned, Lester, this comes a day after the White House announced sanctions against Libya, primarily against Colonel Gaddafi and his family, freezing their assets that are held by U.S. entities and shuttering the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli. Lester?
And of course, the UN is working on its own sanctions as well, right, Mike?
A vote later tonight in the UN Security Council. There are a few disagreements among European allies, among NATO. There's also been talk of a no-fly zone, similar to what we've seen over Iraq and Bosnia some years ago. There are known to be some concerns, logistic concerns, that the entire country could not be covered by a no-fly zone. There's talk now of limiting that to the area above Tripoli, the skies above Tripoli, Lester.
Mike Vicara at the White House. Thanks.